Hello everyone, and welcome to another video from Eagles of Empire Miniatures. So today we've got a battle report for you, and this time we are going to look at one of the battles from the coming scenario book on the Loire Campaign. This battle today is one of the key battles from the campaign, and it's the scenario behind the battle, the scenario you're going to play, has some interesting dynamics. So let's jump into it. I'm really excited about this one. Right, so first of all, here's the map of the gaming table. I thought that would be a nice backdrop while I introduce you to the historical background of the battle. So we are in the Loire Valley. We are in the beginning of October 1870. The French imperial government has collapsed and the new republic has been proclaimed. And Paris at this point was besieged by the German army, the German coalition army, and during the siege of Paris, the very known and patriotic politician Gambetta escaped the city in a hot air balloon, and he landed down in the Loire Valley and was key in drumming up a new army, the Army of the Loire, which main objective was to come to the rescue of besieged Paris. So the Army of the Loire was formed up in the beginning by putting together some reservists and some of the fragments of the old imperial army, and at this time in October it was around 20,000 infantry that consisted of the Army of the Loire. It would later grow and swell up to a number of more than 100,000, mainly of reservists, but at this point we were around 20 to 25,000 men in the army. It was very, very important at this point to conserve the army and to protect the army because it was the, I wouldn't say the last hope, but it was the key hope of relieving Paris of the German siege. So at the head of the French army in the Loire was Commander La Motte Rouge. He started out by, on the 10th of October, actually losing a battle, his first battle against the approaching German force that was dedicated to neutralizing this new army in the Loire. The Germans detached the 1st Bavarian Corps under Ludwig von der Thurn, and he had some Prussian support, the Prussian 22nd Division under von Wittig. So these guys were heading down south from Paris to the Loire and to face La Motte Rouge and his new Army of the Loire. So on the Battle of Artenay on October the 10th, they faced up, and the French lost that battle, which also prompted the decision that led to the scenario we're going to play today. So today is called the capture of Orléans. And why is that? Well, the Loire army was in Orléans. They just lost the Battle of Artenay, and La Motte Rouge wanted to make sure that this army survived. He wanted to extract the army to the other side of the Loire River and disappear into the forests at the south of the Loire River to protect them from being annihilated by the oncoming German force. So it was really a save what can be saved, and it will fight another day kind of situation. Obviously a very big disappointment to the new French government, the Republican government. They had completely different objectives with this army. They wanted the army to push forward towards Paris and relieve the besieged capital. So a retreat and a abandonment of a key city like Orléans was not popular, and it would eventually lead to La Motte Rouge losing command of the Army of the Loire. But in this particular scenario, he has decided to extract his army away from the city. So on the map here you can see Loire is clearly marked in the middle. We have a railway coming across the game table also, and we have the Loire River to the left of Orléans city. So When just looking a little bit at the command points, we got up to the left, we have a 2 command point per round, a value tactical objective, and we have a 4 command point tactical objective at the bridgehead across the Loire. And up to the right we have a farmhouse, which is a 2 command point tactical objective, and way down in the far right corner we have a 4 command point and 1 ammo tactical objective, which is this is the railway leading away from Orléans, and a really important objective to hold to further branch out the German expands into the Loire area. So what is the objectives of the French player and the German player in this particular scenario? Well, let's have a look at the briefing. I will just read this aloud for you. The French briefing we'll start with. Our otherwise stoic General Lamotte Rouge has lost his nerve after Artenay. Realizing the lack of training in his army, he now orders us to seek refuge on the safe side of the Loire River, abandoning Orléans to the German in the process. Every Frenchman that can be saved is a soldier who lives to fight another day. Deployment will be in central Orléans, and you will be fighting a defensive action as you retreat units from the city center and to the road in the forest to the south, leading to the new rally point at La Ferté-Saint-Aubin. You will receive victory points equivalent to the unit strength of the units who make it to the exit point marked on the map with an X. Use the city buildings to your advantage and let the advancing Germans taste the chassepot. Save as many brave Frenchmen as you can. We need at least an army of 27 unit strength to fight on. All hope rests on your shoulders. So that is the French briefing. So basically the French will be deploying, not in the corner of the map, but they will be deploying any units that they buy. They will be deploying inside Orléans. You can see the deployment zone is marked here on the map by the Légion d'Honneur, which is the French faction deployment zone marker. You can see the Prussians will be deploying as normal at the edge of the map. Up to the right top corner you have the Eisenkreuz, the Iron Cross. That is the German deployment zone. So this is a little bit different, the scenario, than a standard game of Eagles of Empire, because the French will not be able to buy victory points. They will earn victory points by extracting units. And a unit that has, for instance, a unit strength of 3, well, that will translate into 3 victory points when they get extracted. So that is how the scenario is built up. The French basically needs to create a line of defense and then start to extract the army, and they will win at 27 points. Let's have the German briefing then. Officers, the French are already on the run. Your task will be to advance and help secure the city of Orléans for the German coalition, while making sure the French don't get to extract the army in one piece. Use your troops cleverly, capture the important tactical ground to the north of the city, and pave the way for your final attack on the defensive position in the city center. And men, let's make them pay for declaring war on us Germans twice. What insolence! Forward and Gott mit uns. And signed by Ludwig von der Thurn, the army commander of the Germans at this time. So basically the German player in this scenario will have the interesting task of putting a stop to the French extraction, while also building up enough strength to penetrate the French defense and probably mess up the deployment zone, or flank or go behind. There's many options how to make this difficult for the French, and all the same as normal, the Prussian player will earn victory points by purchasing these as we go along. So this is a balance game for the Prussians. They need to put enough pressure on the French, make sure they don't get to extract enough troops, while also keeping pace with the French, buying some victory points along the way. So let's jump over and have a look at the actual gaming table. The tactical objectives have been marked out and as stars on the map. We'll start up in top left corner. We have a turquoise star, light blue star. That is the campsite in the forest, worth 2 command points per round. Then we have the orange star, which is the bridgehead across the Loire River. It's worth 4 command points per turn. Up in near to the Prussian deployment zone, we have the red star, worth 2 command points per turn, and we have the railway exit point leading away from Orléans, which is worth the blue star, which is worth 4 command points and 1 ammo. And you can see the red X to the left, which is the extraction point for the French troops. So they'll be deploying in the middle of Orléans. You can see that you have the French Légion d'honneur marker in the middle. They'll be deploying there. And we agreed upon that the cobblestone square would mark the limit of the French deployment. Okay, so let's look at the teams and at round 1. On the French side, we had 2 players, Jens and I, and on the Prussian or the German coalition side, we had my mates Jonas and Thomas. In round 1, either of us had any objectives, so objectives held, of course, 0 per side. Each side would start with 9 command points of basic income to do the recruitment in round 1. And again, just to recap, winning side would have 27 victory points, and the French cannot buy victory points in this particular scenario. They have to earn it by extracting troops at the extraction point marked with a red X on the table. So Jens and I, we looked at the distance between Orléans and the red X on the exit point, and we decided to go with 3 hussars, which would give us some mobility and hopefully some fast points and put some pressure on the German coalition. We don't want to give them too much space to build up troops. We want to pressure them a little bit and get them to buy some victory points also. Thomas and Jonas, they also opted for a hussar unit, mainly to get some mobility and dash down and get one of the tactical objectives, the one with the ammo, which was farthest away from their deployment zone, and of course to get a German section of infantry to really build up strength towards the middle. Let's jump over and have a look at round 1 tactics. So just explaining a little bit what the tactics would look like here. We have this graphic just showing the units marked by these icons. So Jens and I, we had 3 hussar units, 3 pelotons of hussars. 2 of them would dash down towards the exit point, and 1 would go and secure the major tactical objectives closest to our deployment zone, the orange star at the river. And on the German side, Jonas and Thomas, they opted to secure the windmill at 2 points, and then they would have their hussars dash down to get that railway bridgehead for a value of 4 and ammo. So that is the round 1 tactics. Round 1 action. Well, just not a whole lot of action actually, just a lot of movement really. And you can see the hussars dashing down towards the river and securing 4 command points for the French in round 2. So let's have a look at round 2. In round 2, well, the Germans, having had their hussars dash down and get that important tactical objective at the railway exit point, well, they have now 4 plus 2, the 2 being the windmill income, so they get 4 plus ammo for the railway and they get 2 command points for the objective at the windmill. So a total of 6 command points plus ammo for the German side, while the French only held the tactical objective at the river, so they get 4 command points. Well, purchases. On the French side, Jens and I, we could see the Prussian infantry nearing from the windmill, so we wanted to put some infantry in some of the buildings that we had in Orléans. And whilst Garde Mobile might be a vulnerable unit in hand-to-hand combat, they shoot pretty good, especially if you opt to do them with the Chassepot rifle instead of the tabatière, which has a shorter range. So, but in this game we played them with the Chassepot. So we bought a full section, and they are at a reduced cost compared to normal infantry because they have this weakness of being freshly mobilized. So they actually cost only 2 command points per squad. So you can get a full section for 4 command points, and that actually matched our income. So we went on and bought a full section of that. On the Prussian side, they didn't buy any units. They would be saving all the command points and ammo because they wanted to do a doctrine card activation, giving them the option to make extended movement with the infantry. And that's particularly one is called Prussian Tactics. So, and it costs 1 command point per squad, and the squad and both squads have to be in command, meaning they have to have an officer, which was the case. So they'd be using 2 command points for Prussian Tactics and have 4 command point plus ammo, travel over for round 3. During round 2, the French side extracted 2 units of Prussian Hussars, each of them being unit strength 3. So that's a total of 6 victory points, and I've marked that here in the round 2 overview because I think it's important to keep track of the victory points also for you guys. Right, let's have a look at the tactics of round 2. So while the French have 2 Hussar units now exiting the board, the last remaining Hussar unit would dash up and get that tactical objective up in the forest worth 2 command points per round. So they would also come up to 6 command points in total income. The French also deployed the section of Garde Mobile. You can see that is marked here in the farmhouse to the left of the French deployment zone, or in the left part of the deployment zone, and they just deployed directly into the house because it was inside the cobblestone area. On the Prussian side or German side, well, Thomas and Jonas, they decided to move their Hussars away from the line of fire of the newly deployed Garde Mobile, which is probably smart. Just move them away and have them kind of hover and protect the Blue Star area. And the Prussian infantry, well, interesting enough, it's going to go for a kind of a flanking movement towards the northern part of the city, putting a little bit of pressure on the French left. So round 2 action. Well, as the Prussian infantry was nearing the French position, a firefight broke out. But since both units had the advantage of some heavy cover, neither side had any casualties here. Right, so that concludes round 2. Let's have a look at round 3. In round 3, both sides, both the French and the German side, had 2 objectives. However, Prussian income has the additional income of ammo because of the Blue Star. But now the French are up at 6 command points too, and they are going to buy 2 units of French Hussars. Again, this is an ideal unit to work with in this particular scenario because it's pretty cheap to buy, only costs 3 command points, and it gives you 3 unit strength when you 3 victory points, 3 unit strength when you extract it. So again, Jens and I, we opted for some Hussars, and we would during this round extract 1 unit of Hussars, namely the one coming down from the camp, from the light blue star all the way up in the top left corner. We would move that out through the extraction point and get the 3 victory points there. Now the Prussians kind of, I think they felt they had to do something in terms of victory points, which was the idea from our side also, to put pressure on them, not allowing them to do a lot of recruitment. Prussian income this time would go to buying 8 victory points. Now remember, they had 4 command points and 1 ammo that traveled over from round 2, so they would actually be at 10 command points and 2 ammo in the bank here. So they spent 8 of their command points to buy 8 victory points, and again they would use the doctrine activation Prussian tactics, which cost 1 command point per squad, and they have 2 squads moving, so spending 2 command points on doing that. Now the last 2 ammo, well, they'll travel over to round 4. So let's have a look at round 3 tactics. Right, so first of all, of course, as mentioned, one of the hussars units, the one that is in the top left corner, well, that would dash down and extract itself through the extraction point, while in the middle of Orléans, in the deployment zone, 2 new hussar units would pop up, and they would be moving across the river and towards the extraction point also. We opted to keep the 2 guard mobile squads in the farmhouse, just to they were in a good position there. They had pretty good sight out. They could cover the hussars, the Prussian hussars down in the corner, and they could also see and shoot at the closing Prussian infantry. So we opted to keep them there. Now the Prussians would do a sneaky thing this turn. They would try to move around the French position, and they get into some of the houses in Orléans. So round 3 action. Well, as the Prussians, they dash from the cornfield, and they run with everything they have towards the farmhouse. Some fire broke out between the guard mobile entrenched in the house in the middle, and the Prussians behind this stone wall. Again, this time hits were made, but also saves were rolled, and no casualties occurred because of a lot of cover for both units. So that concludes round 3. Let's jump over and see what happened in round 4. In round 4, both sides held 2 objectives. Again, the French income would be 6 command points, while the Prussians would have 6 plus the ammo. Prussians having saved 2 ammo tokens from round 3. So purchases. Well, the French, well, Jens and I, we looked at each other and agreed, well, it's a sound strategy we are applying at the moment. Let's get some more hussars. They can move pretty fast. They can probably dodge getting entangled in any hand-to-hand combat, and they could secure us some more victory points. We had from round 3, we had 2 hussar units that was very close to extraction points. So in the movement phase during round 4, those would get extracted and would give us an additional 6 victory points. Prussian purchases this round, well, to keep pace, they bought 4 victory points, and well, interestingly enough, they're going to use a different kind of doctrine activation this round. This one cost 2 command points plus 1 ammo, and that's the Prussian artillery strike. It's a very brutal weapon the Prussians have, but very historically correct. They're able to aim a lot of heavy Krupp fire down on a particular unit. The only prerequisite is that they have to have an officer which has line of sight towards the unit they want to shoot at, and then of course you have to have the resources to activate the doctrine card. But no problems there. They spent 2 command points plus 1 ammo to call down an artillery strike on the hussars that's freshly recruited, trying to cross the river. So during the movement phase, they will be exposed, and during the fire phase, the Prussians can call down the artillery on them. So let's have a look at the tactics overview, because that shows it pretty well. So check out that blue arrow on the graphics here. So the Prussian section now inside the house to the north in Orléans, well, they have line of sight down towards the French hussars trying to extract themselves in the next round. So they are in the open, these hussars. There's a free line of sight, and the Prussians have every chance to call down this artillery strike. Well, the off-board artillery strike that the Prussians can call down is pretty brutal. It's a 6d6 strike, and any sixes rolled will cause unsavable damage because it's artillery. So you get 6 dice, and you have a 1 to 6 chance really of causing a casualty. What happened? Well, I'll tell you in a minute. Let's just suffice to say that it got a little bit bloody. Meanwhile, well, the Prussian hussars are still just hovering over the Blue Star. They aren't being challenged, and in the middle, the French Guard mobiles are still entrenched in the farmhouse, rethinking their situation at this point. So, action in round 4. You can see the German doctrine card here on the picture, and it's the one all the way down to the bottom called Artillerieunterstützung, which is German for artillery support. So they're gonna call in some artillery support here, and it's in the shooting phase of the game. So again, 6 dice were rolled, 2 6s and 2 kills. So a tough one for the French unit that got hit, had 2 casualties, but again we had 2 hussar units trying to make it off the board, so losing 2 casualties would give us unit strength 1 in one unit and still remaining unit strength 3 in the other unit. So a total of 4 unit strength would still make it off table. But yeah, the Prussians had a good strategy, a really interesting strategy here to mingle with and try to let's say create problems with the French extraction zone by this artillery strike. That's really clever play by Jonas and Thomas, and Jens and I, we had to come up with something now, because now our bread and butter was really threatened here. And yeah, let's see in round 5 what we came up with. In round 5 still both sides hold 2 objectives. As normal, the French have their 6 command points, the German have 6 also, but an additional ammo token with 2 saved from round 4, so they would have 3 ammo tokens this round to do with. And purchasing, well, as you remember from round 4, we now have Prussians entrenched inside a house, having line of sight down towards this French extraction point, being able to call down artillery strikes and robbing the French players of victory points this way. Not a good situation for the French, so we had to do something. So as mentioned earlier, the Guard Mobile is probably not the best unit the French have in hand-to-hand, probably the opposite, the poorest. They have a freshly raised rule, which means that they have to take a morale test to see if the unit will be suffering desertion when they go into hand-to-hand, which is to represent the fact that many of the Guard Mobile, or all of them, were freshly raised at this point and had huge moral issues in combat. So what to do? Well, luckily we had 6 command points in income, which would be just enough to buy 2 squads, meaning a full section of standard French line infantry. So these guys would have one single mission in their life, and that would be to clear out the house in Orléans of Prussians with line of sight towards the extraction point. During this round, our decimated French hussars, the unit that was hit by the artillery strike, and the other unit to the side of it, well, they got extracted. One of them having a unit strength of 3 and the other one having a unit strength of 1, since it got the artillery strike in its head. So a total of 4 victory points was generated here in this round for the French side. Prussian purchases buying 6 victory points here to keep up with the French, and having a 3 ammo tokens travel over to the next round. So let's have a look at round 5 tactics. Well, something is going to happen now. As you can see, we have French line infantry deploying in the middle of Orléans, storming the house with the Prussian infantry in. And, well, what's happening with the Garde Mobile? They're on the move, putting some pressure on the Prussian hussars. There's only one peloton of hussars down there, or one Périte as it's called in German, and we have 2 squads, a full section of Garde Mobile actually shooting pretty well. So Jens and I, we decided to jump out of the house and storm down towards the Blue Star and put some pressure on German income. We had to do something basically. The move, the tactics that Thomas and Jonas had applied was threatening our plan to keep a safe extraction route out of Orléans. So we had to do something to try to mess that up for them. So round 5 action. Well, wow. A classic situation of an attacking unit not winning hand-to-hand combat. Actually, as some of you who have seen the video on how hand-to-hand works, there is a rule in Eagles of Empire Skirmish rule that if you do more saves, you have an X number of defensive dice, and your opponent has a Y number of attacking dice. And if you do more saves than your opponent does hits, well, you as the defender will cause excess saves, which will translate directly into casualties on the attacking unit. So you can't just win a battle if you're a small, scrappy unit attacking a stronger unit in heavy cover. You'll get your ass kicked. And well, the French they lost a casualty here due to excess saves made by the Prussians. The Prussians, of course, also enjoying a heavy cover on their 2 squads inside the house, as the French had to storm in and try to clear a building. Now, worth mentioning is that normally, if we would have had more command points, we could have recruited French Marines. French Marines are experts in clearing out houses, and they have a special ability with their commander to do that. But we were also limited in terms of resources, so we had to opt for the best possible solution here, which was French line infantry. And it went as it went. The French got repelled, losing 1 casualty in the process. So round 6, again both sides holding 2 tactical objectives, French income being 6 command points, while Prussian income being 6 command points plus ammo, with another 3 ammo tokens in reserve from round 5. Now, in this round, Jens and I, being the French players, we looked at each other and we thought, well, we gotta do something completely outrageous here to tip the scales, because the Prussians are, they're loading, they're stacking up victory points, and they're not really under any pressure from us. We're probably too defensive here. So we looked at each other and we said, okay, well, what would happen if instead of riding for the extraction point, we bought 2 hussar units and had them dash out towards the German tactical objectives to put those under pressure? Because if you look at the situation on the gaming table, the only defense the Prussians had to their income was 1 unit of hussars, and we already had a full section of Garde Mobile storming down to challenge that 1 unit. So what would happen if we inverted our strategy and put some pressure on the Prussian income with our own hussars? Well, we're going to try that in this round. So we bought 2 pelotons, 2 units of hussars. Prussian purchases, no surprises, a full amount of CPs earned would be spent on buying victory points. The Germans here could smell victory around the corner. They've already surpassed the French in number of victory points, and 27 was the magic number. So they were actually looking at a a win in round 7. Round 7 would see them being able to buy an additional 3 victory points, taking them to 27. So the Prussians, well, they were smelling victory here. So what happened in round 6? Let's look at the tactical table. So let's start in Orléans. We had a French line infantry section fighting it out with a Prussian line infantry section. However, the Prussians were going to do a move down parallel to the river towards the French tactical objective, the Orange Star, to also decimate French income and threaten the French extraction route, so to speak. Well, 2 new French Hussar units were recruited, and rather than having them dash to the left across the river and down towards the extraction point, this time we would do a full movement to the right, both units moving with the standard movement, and since they're not shooting, they get to do an additional half move in their shooting phase. This is scout cavalry ability. Hussars have this ability. So one of the units would dash up and grab the red star, while the other unit would dash down and participate in the ensuing battle of the blue star. Now, really important here to mention is that tactical objectives are seized by having a unit within the proximity of the tactical objective. Then it turns into a French objective or a Prussian objective, depending on who's near. And you hold the objective for as long as it's not being taken by the opponent. So the Prussians had held the red star even with no units close by. They'd held the red star since round 1. But now the French would take the red star. The blue star would become what is called contested, since both sides have units in the vicinity of the star. So it becomes contested. The orange star potentially could become contested too, but the light blue French star in the top left corner, well, that's this also gonna just stay French. So potentially this means that if this move succeeds for the French, they would have 2 or 3 tactical objectives, whilst the German would have 0. So if this move succeeded, the French would actually have neutralized German income for round 7, blocking the German victory. And, well, round 6 played out like this. We had a huge firefight and hand-to-hand combat down in around the blue star, resulting in this being contested, while the French would take the red star, keep the orange star and the light blue star. So round 6 would end with the French having 3 stars, 3 tactical objectives, and 1 being contested, namely the dark blue. So let's jump over to round 7 and see what the Prussians can do about that. At the beginning of round 7, I guess it's an understatement to say that the tables were turned. Prussian objectives held 0. Now this is not good. The Prussians, they needed to do something, and they basically didn't have any resources to do it with, no income. They had some ammo tokens, but they can't really be used on their own. While the French side, well, they had a Prussian section storming down parallel to the river, going for the orange star. What to do about that problem? Well, with an increased income now of 8 command points, we, as the French player, we could look at some more expensive, hard-hitting elite infantry. So we bought a full section of tirailleurs algériens, or Tuco, a really hard-hitting unit in hand-to-hand. And the main task of this section would simply be to deploy and to go down to the orange star and contest it and take the fight. with that full Prussian section. Just basically be near the Orange Star so that it would only become contested, again blocking Prussian income and taking out a fight with the Prussians there. Now the Turcos, they have a high number of defense die, and they're pretty strong in hand-to-hand, especially if they're led by an officer. So round 7 was a make or break, so to speak, for the Prussians. They had to win the fight over the Orange Star, otherwise there would simply be very little they could do. At the Blue Star, now let's have a look at the tactics table so you can get an overview. At the Blue Star, we now had a hand-to-hand with the Prussian Hussars at the Blue Star, and French Hussars, and 2 squads of French Guard Mobile. Now, the Prussians suffered a casualty in round 6 to the fire of the Guard Mobile, and that meant they can only hit and save on 5s and 6s, so they were already, you know, under pressure. And at the Orange Star, we would this round have a firefight between the Prussians, partly entrenched in the building close to the Orange Star, and the Turco section nearby, contesting the star together with the Prussians. So really difficult situation round 7 for the Prussians. They would have to win against the Turco and wipe them out completely in order to earn the Orange Star and get those 4 command points, or they would have to win the hand-to-hand at the Blue Star against superior forces of the French down there. The French at this point we didn't really worry about extracting any troops, because we knew that if we could only kill off or block the last remaining Germans, well, then there wouldn't be any more fighting the Germans. They would have to simply cede the victory. So round 7, how did it play out? Well, Prussian and Turco had a fight down towards the river, but the Turcos stood their ground, and the star became contested as planned. Even being out in the open, the Turco really did some good saving, and at this point the Prussians didn't have a whole lot to do. The big hand-to-hand at the Blue Star also ended in the Prussian Hussars being wiped out. So at the end of round 7, we'll jump over right now and just have a look at the final result here, beginning of round 8. At the end of round 7, we had complete dominance of the Blue Star for the French side, and also of the Red Star and the Light Blue Star, leaving France with 3 objectives held, while only the Orange Star was contested, and the only Prussian units left on the gaming table was a section of infantry entrenched in a building but surrounded by French Turcos and line infantry. So it was really it was only a question of time before this last section of Prussian infantry would be fought down, and it would be a clear path to victory for the French. So at this point, the Prussian players ceded the victory to France, despite having 24 victory points. So final thoughts and conclusion. Well, I think that it was a both fun and rewarding scenario. The different dynamic for the French to get a victory, namely that they had to extract troops and they would turn the unit strength of the extracted troops into victory points. That was a really fun dynamic, and it made the game a little bit, well, let's say gamey, because we would be extracting a lot of hussars. So we're kind of laughing around the table. It was almost like a cavalry barracks that had to be extracted from Orléans. But we also saw some other units on the French side being recruited. We had line infantry, we had Turcos, we had the Garde Mobile. So it was a diverse force that won the game for the French side. In terms of tactics, well, I have to tip my hat to Jonas and Thomas. They had a great tactics, I think, of trying to protect the main blue star while putting pressure around the flank and looping in the Prussian artillery on the extraction point. It was a really good and sound strategy. And it almost worked. I mean, they had 24 victory points when we called it off, and if they'd only been able to protect the red star or just keep the blue star for one more round, they would have had a victory. They would have been able to buy those 3 remaining victory points and secure the Prussian victory. So it was really, you know, with nails clinging to the edge of the table that the French won this one. Yeah, I think it was probably won in round 6. Or really all the way back to round 5 when we decided to move out the Guardmobile and have them put pressure on the Prussian blue star. So really fun, really rewarding scenario, and an overall great game. So thanks to Jens, Jonas and Thomas for playing this scenario with me, and I look forward to doing further playthroughs of our coming Loire Campaign book scenarios with these guys, and to show you the following battle reports and share that with you as well. So have a great day out there, everybody, and enjoy your hobby, and I hope you'll get some good games done out there with your mates. And yeah, have a good one. Bye-bye.